Hey, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. And I also got a YouTube channel by the same name. You can search me on YouTube, Salvador Briggman, or youtube.com/crowdcrux. This podcast, the focus of this show is to bring to you the cutting edge techniques when it comes to Kickstarter, Indiegogo, equity crowdfunding, e-commerce, really how you get something out there, raise funding, and make this thing a reality, right? So today's episode, I interviewed InCharge X, the 100-watt Swiss Army knife of cables. Now, these guys raised over $500,000 for this campaign, more than 11,000 backers, but it is not their only project. They've also done 7 other campaigns. This is for Rolling Square, and this is on Indiegogo. So they've done a bunch of other campaigns here, many successful projects, -2, Tau, InCharge 6, InCharge Universal, right? I can go on and on and on. What you're going to hear today is kind of the humble beginnings of an electronic and a design company that was kind of just started out, literally out of thin air, and how you, if you have a similar ambition to build a company and to do it from scratch and have people that you like working with, to have a vision that you is compelling, that's pulling you towards it, then I think you're going to like today's episode. And also, these guys are from Switzerland, right? So you don't necessarily have to be in the United States to launch a campaign or to have a very successful company online. You can be anywhere in the world. That's the beauty of Indiegogo and the beauty of Kickstarter nowadays. You're going to hear a lot of great tips and advice from the company here today. One of the things that I found really just compelling from the founders was the way that their thinking changed over time about how to make products, how to communicate with their backers, and the approach that they have, because they know, obviously you can go and you can search on Amazon, you can search online, you can find all these different types of like cables and stuff, but they really stand out. And there's kind of a secret sauce behind that and how they're able to stand out. And you're going to hear about that basically on today's podcast episode. Now, the other quick thing I want to mention before we dive into the show, number one, I'm now on Instagram, so you can search my name, Salvador Briggman. It will bring up my Instagram profile. You can check out some of the videos that I am putting out there. I also have a great forum, kickstarterforum.org. You can interact with the community there. Got some other stuff, my newsletter, my books. I can tell you more about that after the show, I think, today, if you really like the episode. But the final thing I want to leave you with before we dive in to today's podcast episode is whether or not you're thinking about taking action. Because we hear time and time again of all of these entrepreneurs who are coming on the show, and you can look at the success, the $500K that they've raised, the $500K in sales, the millions of dollars they've done in e-commerce. And it can kind of be a little bit intimidating, So the goal that I've always had with this show is to make it not so intimidating. I think that when we see people who are around the world doing things that we only dream of doing or aspire to, it's very easy to think that they're special, or it's very easy to put them at a distance from us and like what we could accomplish given our resources. But in my own individual experience, the more that you get to know these people, the more you realize they're just normal human beings, right? They had an idea, they scratched it out on a napkin, and they just decided, rather than abandoning it after a month, that they stuck with it, right? And they kept plowing forward, and they kept making steps towards making their dream happen. And it didn't happen overnight. But now they're in a position in their life where they run their own company, they're working on cool stuff, they got great staff, and you can do the same thing. It is literally just a choice. It might not be this project, it might be a couple projects from now, right? But it literally is a choice if you want to walk down that path or if you don't. So I hope that you take away that lesson from today's podcast. It is coming up right after this. This podcast episode is sponsored by the Gadgetflow. The Gadgetflow reaches over 28 million people, and they've been around since 2012. They are Indiegogo and Kickstarter experts. They featured over 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns, and if you have a technology or design campaign, it is a great platform to generate awareness and get backers. You can check them out at thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. I have 2 brothers here who have had some incredible, phenomenal success on Indiegogo. Their current campaign, InCharge X, the 100-watt Swiss Army knife of cables, has already raised over $400,000, more than 8,000 backers there. In addition, they're now delivering Hyphen 2, changing the game of wireless earbuds. This is a 9,000 plus backer campaign coming out of Switzerland, over 900,000 raised. We got Carlo and his brother here on the show. Guys, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having us. Thanks.
So how did this journey get started? I mean, you've had 8 campaigns here, a lot of success. How did this get started?
It all started quite a few years ago. It was, I think, we were just kids, but Lorenzo had this amazing idea of making just cutting a cable very short and using it as a keychain to always have a cable with you. Very simple idea, very straightforward, and so simple that people actually loved it, and it became quite a great success. Actually, at the time, it was one of the largest campaigns for a number of backers. The price of the product was so low that there was actually a lot of people joining us in that campaign.
And which product was this for?
This was the InCharge, the very first InCharge. Then we continued. Yeah, it was like 30,000 backers. That was a lot of backers for 2014.
That's a lot, yeah.
And then we were young, so we took a small break. Lorenzo started working in an automation company.
Yeah, it was like
robotic company.
Warehousing robotic company, logistics.
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided to, just make more products. We launched other campaigns. The second InCharge Bolt. Then we launched InCharge All-in-One. And then so InCharge now is at the 6th version with InCharge X that you mentioned before, which is currently in production, and we hope to deliver very soon to our backers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And while we did that, we also developed a power bank, keychain power bank. It's called Tau, and launched that on Indiegogo as well as 2 versions of Hyphen, our earbuds that you also mentioned.
How old were you guys when you started your first campaign there?
So I was 23 and Carlo was...
I was 18.
Wow. And what was that like? I mean, you're coming out with a new product. Are you a designer? Are you an engineer? Like, what are your skill sets?
Well, actually, before that, we were making software. We were just working together, making some software, some websites that had a lot of traffic. So we were just... that was our skill set at the time. But Lorenzo has always been very inventive. So he made the first product just as he handmade the first version for himself and then realized the potential of it. So once we decided to keep pursuing the product design concept, we hired people, we learned a lot of things. And now we're able to design much more complex products.
When it came to that initial prototype, I think this is something that a lot of people wrestle with, right? Like they look at your success and it almost seems untouchable, right? It's almost like you've done so much in sales, you have so many backers, but when you're just getting started, how did you even make that initial prototype? Like, was this out of 3D printing? Was this like foam? How did you make the first prototypes?
Well, so at the time, in late 2014, 3D printers weren't something so much popular yet. So it was very much, DIY skills that you had to kind of develop and some inventive, creativity also helps find, some components and products to start with and then disassemble and rebuild, the prototype by hand. Obviously, it depends a lot on the kind of, product you're talking about.
Actually, if I remember correctly, the very first one was your cable broke. And then you just cut it and join it. So it was just the Apple original cable, and that was just for the idea. Then for the prototype itself, we bought a lot of cables and realized what were the best components of each. We had some tiny parts 3D printed from a company outside of Milan that was far away to reach, but and then we put everything together and we had that very first prototype.
That's insane, man. That's awesome. And then, you're able to eventually bring this to market and to get a bunch of funding. What made you just decide at that point not to continue on the journey? Like, why did you go and get another job?
No, actually, I was already working at the time. So
yeah, maybe I recalled it wrong, but
I was already working. Like, I started working. I was like an internship program, which then turned out to be a classic 9-to-5 job. But then after a while, I decided Carlo was still studying.
Yeah, but it's not like we took a break, like we stopped working completely. It's just that we didn't make it, at the time, we didn't make it our main focus, you know? So Lorenzo was working this place, and so he didn't have so much time to dedicate to what now is Rolling Square. And I was studying. I wasn't a very good student, so I was spending most of my time on Charge and the other products and ideas. But we weren't like fully 100% focused on it.
When did that shift? When did that begin to, laser your focus a bit more on Rolling Square?
I'd say like probably in 2017. So 3 years later, close to 3 years later.
And what kind of prompted that?
As I was saying, like
2016.
it was 2016, but we were actually like kind of like working on it. I mean, we were working on it as well, but not with like laser focus as you should have, So in 2016, we kind of finished. Lorenzo just leave. We talked about it, and Lorenzo decided to leave his job. I still had some exams, but didn't really attend university. I just went for the exams, so I could spend most of my time working on it. And then that's when we actually started to expand the team and structure as a company.
Was there like a conversation? What really made you decide to do that? Because you had a small success on your hands, right? And you have your job and you're going to college or university, you're doing this part-time. Like, what made you decide to say, you know what, we're going to like laser focus, we're going to work on this hard, we're going to expand the team? Was there a reason behind that, or was it just the success you were seeing?
Well, I was always going to. Then my idea was to do that since the very initial projects. Since software, it was my idea. Lorenzo as well, but in that time he was evaluating the option of that job. It was a really good job.
Sorry, jumping there, but yeah, as far as what Carlos said, obviously for him, he was still a student, so he never thought about any other paths. As far as my regards, I was working this 9 to 5 job, which I liked it in some ways because it was very, I always liked robotics and engineering, so I was really passionate about it. But also at the same time, at some point, I really realized that it wasn't gonna be my lifestyle, and that I was much more passionate and much more, hard worker when I was working on my projects and my ideas. And even while I was working there as an engineer, in my spare time and in the evenings, I was always thinking about our projects and our new products, ideas, and I just couldn't stop it at some point.
Yeah, so we were both kind of about to explode in a way, so we had that conversation and we decided it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys were obsessed, like in a good way, kind of, with that.
Yeah, definitely.
When it comes to this and you decide to expand the team, like how big is your team now that you have working at the company?
Now we're 10 people.
Awesome. And these people are obviously helping you bring your visions and all of the new products to light. Now that you've gone through this a few times, right, bringing new products and this new one that you recently are delivering on, what is that like when you finally get people emailing you or commenting or posting on Instagram, like showing your product? What does that feel like?
That's a great thing about crowdfunding, that there is this amazing sense of community that you don't find really anywhere else. I mean, maybe social media and crowdfunding this, because it's not like you make a product, you put it on a shelf, someone buys it, and that's it. There is an actual deep relationship with every backer. It kind of feels like it doesn't feel like it. It is like that. They actually help us develop our products, We're very active with all kinds of interaction. We have Telegram groups, emails, social media, and so on. So if we, at this stage, which I think is a great advantage compared to our competitors, is that if we really want to know clearly what our customer base would prefer on some detail or on some products altogether, we just have to talk to them, So it really helps in making a product that when you actually deliver it to them, they realize how much thought and how much attention to detail went into it.
Yeah, it must feel very satisfying, I imagine.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this, like, I think that the biggest question that I get with launching a new product is, what about profit, right? Because you guys have like done this phenomenal thing where you can sell great products at a pretty low price point, you know? How do you think about profit? Is that something you even consider when you're doing an Indiegogo? Like, how does that fit into the equation?
Well, profit is, you don't really go to crowdfunding for profit.
Yeah, it's secondary.
Yeah, it's very much secondary compared to other business models, like an Amazon shop or something like that. It's very different. What the value that you bring is that you create a huge community, and you create a brand that is known and respected. And that means that when you actually want to focus a lot more on profit, then you already have the user base that will give you the sales that you need to do that. So profit is not a big focus at launch, but definitely don't make the mistake of doing something like some campaigns did, where they don't even think about breaking even, because if you do that, then you're not going to deliver.
Yeah. So basically, it's something that you have to make sure you're not going into the red, right, in terms of expenses, but something that you really shouldn't prioritize as much as building the community, building the brand, getting the word out, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah. The absolute main focus is on the community and on the brand and on the product first. And you just don't have to go in the red, because then everything crumbles.
When I think about e-commerce, people nowadays are ordering stuff on Amazon and they're getting it in like 2 or 3 days, right? What is usually like a normal delivery timeline for your guys, for your products that you come out with when you're doing an Indiegogo? I know you're delivering one of them pretty soon. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, it depends on the product, because some products we already have them. I mean, lately most of the times we already have them pretty much finished when we launch the campaign. And so then we take 2 or 3 months before delivery. So from the day that the campaign ends, then maybe add the 2 months or 3 months, and then you have the delivery, the ship out date. Because we want to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible during manufacturing. It hasn't always been like this. So, for example, the first hyphen, we actually continued development during the campaign. We did a lot of improvements due to the success of the product. So the lead time was longer by maybe 2 or 3 months. I don't remember exactly.
If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured, I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillment, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist, and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist. fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately.
Obviously, you have to also factor in the hiccups that you're gonna encounter during either production or shipping or development, if you decide to continue development, or if you launch when you're not fully developed yet.
Are most of the people who are pre-ordering on your Indiegogos, are they familiar with crowdfunding, or is this kind of like the first time that they're discovering the platform? You kind of have to educate a bit.
It's hard to give you an exact split of the two groups, but there are definitely both groups. And the ones that don't know what crowdfunding are the most vocal, and they're the most angry when they realize that they're not gonna get it in a week,
Mm-hmm.
You just have to understand where they're coming from and just explain to them clearly what crowdfunding is. And one thing that we do that a lot of campaigns don't do is we always give the possibility to the backers to cancel their contribution until pretty much 2 days before we ship out.
Mm-hmm.
So if the customer decides they don't want to wait anymore, if they didn't understand that it was a crowdfunding, whatever the reason is, they can just cancel the contribution.
So basically being honest about the delivery timelines, how it works, and just kind of doing a little bit of hand-holding, I guess.
For sure, yeah. You have to be as transparent as possible and as clear as possible, because you're talking to very different kind of people. and you have to be very, very, maybe, exactly as you said, you have people that are their, 10 campaign and people that have never even heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo. So you have to be clear for both groups.
You guys have had experience and you've worked in the web development industry, right? And you know a lot, it seems, about like engineering and design and thinking through problems. I'd be curious to know, do you think that the people that are really loyal fans and are buying your new products and that kind of stuff, is it the design aspect? Is it the technology? Is it that you really just kind of get these people? What do you think it is that they're sticking with you through each of these launches?
Well, it's definitely a mixture of these things. So most of our products are very, very unique. So if you want to have a power bank that is tiny, is universal, and you can put it on your keychain and you can charge it very easily, the only place to buy it is from us. If you want a high quality keyring cable that is universal and so on, the only place to buy it is from us. So basically, I think the largest share goes to the usefulness of the product. Then you definitely have design, you definitely have durability, you definitely have that sense of being an early adopter.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier was the way in which crowdfunding kind of fits into your business model, which is it allows you to test, it allows you to attract a community, right? You can really interact with that community. When it comes after Indiegogo, what is it that's allowed you to build, this team of 10 people? Is it the wholesaling? Is it that you're selling on the website? Like, how do you structure your business model after Indiegogo? What's been most, helpful for you?
Yeah. After crowdfunding, we have different channels. Obviously, wholesale, our own e-commerce. So we keep those two main channels that are selling to distribution channels and selling directly. And we also do some initiatives of branding. So basically, some of our products are very fitted for this category of making also promotional items. So you have some large companies, like Intel, Google. They come to us and they say, I want X thousand units with my logo on it. So we also do a lot of that.
Is there a reason you guys haven't explored Amazon, or did I just not do my research well enough?
No, we are on Amazon. Now we're directly on Amazon, so we sell directly there with our seller account. Before we were doing that through a distributor, but we aren't like 100% focused on Amazon. It's just another channel for us, but it's not our main channel. I think the reason for this is what I was saying before. That is that we are still very much focusing on creating very loyal and engaged community, and to do that we think that we have the duty of giving them good products. So we keep innovating and we keep developing new products. That's what most of the people in our office do.
When it comes to this journey, what surprised you guys the most? I mean, obviously you might have some surprises with which products hit the most, right? Or which ones are most popular. What surprised you in your, I think it's now maybe 7 years or 8 years, this journey? What surprised you?
It's a good question. It's a tough question.
Well, definitely the very first project surprised us a lot because we didn't expect that at all. We're just like, it's very useful. Let's try and see what happens if we publish this project, That was a huge surprise. And then another surprise is to see how many people actually support you. There's like this sense of being part of something, So for I'm talking from their side. So it's amazing to see how they support you and they keep even in the small things. If we have something that we really don't know how to do, we just ask our community and they even can support us with that, because they come from all kinds of backgrounds.
In what way has your lifestyle changed? Because you mentioned that you didn't like the lifestyle of having this 9-to-5 job. And even though you enjoyed the work, like it wasn't just for you, the lifestyle. How has the lifestyle changed?
So for me, it changed that now I don't work 9 to 5, but I work maybe 9 to 9. And it's like a 24/7 job because even any holiday now, I just, we always think about what we can do to improve our community experience and what we can do to improve our products. And we always think about the next product. So it's a never-ending job in some ways. It's the main difference, with a regular job is that you really can't switch off. But this obsession is definitely in a positive way because it really, feeds our minds that we can transfer to our products and to our backers.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the other big differences is you have to kind of be aware of the business, right? So like you're not just doing the job of creating or designing. You also have to think about like management and like that kind of crap, and leadership and team building, right? All these things that a company would think about that for you if you're working for them. Now it's like you kind of have to form that yourself to a degree.
Yeah, but that's also very stimulating. It's very engaging to go to work and think that you have to build so many different things, and then maybe at the end of the year or at the end of the period, look back and see what you built. I don't know personally because I've never been, I've never worked in a company as an employee, but I think that the big difference there is that you actually can look at what you built once you're actually building a company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that's a major difference, and you can obviously create memories as well with your team, right? Because then it's no longer just you who's coming out with new products. It's like you're doing it as a group, you're doing it as a team, and you guys can see how you change and grow as the years go on, and that can be really rewarding in a sense.
For sure, we try to make the job similar for everyone in the team, meaning that what we want the team to feel like is to actually feel like they're building something as well, not just they're doing that tiny job or that tiny part of the job, but they're actually building a lot. And we've noticed that a lot of the people that work at Rolling Square, when we were hiring them, they were saying kind of the same things. I was working in this company, I was designing products for them, but I only did my tiny part, and then I sent the project to the engineer, and that was it. I couldn't see, and then maybe the engineer changed it completely. So, they didn't feel like they were building something. But now I think that's what it feels like when you're actually working in our team.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, guys. So I do have a couple more questions, but before we do, maybe we can talk a little bit about InCharge X, which now has 7 days to go. You've been 3,000% funded. You're doing really well. I got over 8,000 backers. Is there anything you want to tell the community about either InCharge X or anything new you're coming out with?
I mean, sure, yeah. The InCharge X we're actually going to extend the campaign, most likely. So we're going to add another 20 days. That's not going to have any impact on the shipping lead times that we gave out so far. The InCharge 6, which is version previous to this one, was great success. And InCharge X is basically what I was talking about when I said that we build our products based on what the users tell us on the previous versions, So we really hope that it will be, the attention to detail that we put to every aspect will be actually appreciated by the community.
Yeah, I think so too. And you've developed such a great brand as well that it's almost like a given that whatever you come out with, I think is, you guys are going to have attention to detail, good quality stuff, deliver on time if you can, right? So you kind of have built up that brand, right? So I just have like one or two more questions. One is a common question that I get is like, crowdfunding has changed obviously since 2013, right? And it's much more well-designed, really good video. When it comes to marketing, what's working best for you? Is it the community you already have? Is it you doing Facebook ads? Like what's really helping to get some funding aside from just Indiegogo?
There have been some positive changes and some negative changes within crowdfunding. Definitely a lot of funding comes from our community, and that kind of acts as a launchpad for then having more exposure and getting seen by more and more people. Also, a big factor, as you said, is advertising on social media. One thing that we noticed that is not as easy to do compared to the past is getting published on major blogs. I think the reason for that is that there have been, over the years, a lot of terrible campaigns, both on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, even scam campaigns. So maybe the blogs now are a little bit more skeptical, about discussing crowdfunding projects. The community is definitely growing. It looks like it's getting better and better.
Great. Well, my last question for you here is, if you were to speak to yourself, I think you said your 23-year-old self, right? When you were just getting started, you guys are putting together the initial prototype, you're pasting together cables, right? And you're really getting this initial thing together. What advice would you give to yourself at that stage? Because a lot of the community is in that stage of, building their first prototype or just getting it together. What advice would you give?
I would give the advice of making, kind of sounds stupid, but I would give the advice of making everything perfect. So like literally take a product that might look simple as it is and take it and break it into like 10,000 pieces, and each single piece has to be perfect, and that not just the product, but the customer relationship and everything. But while I give this advice, I realize that it's quite hard to do that when you're just starting and when you don't have the resources to do that. So there's a learning curve, but that should be your main goal. Just try to exceed every expectations that the backers have.
Okay. Does your brother have any that he would give?
Yeah, I think like more or less what Carlos said, it's easy to give us advices afterwards, but definitely we underestimated when we were young and we had a lot to learn. So with the first Kickstarter campaign, for example, we underestimated the logistical aspects. So we ended up, which is kind of a funny story. We ended up, packing the shipments ourselves, and because we didn't find a logistic partner at the time.
We didn't even look for it. That's the thing. Packing 30,000 envelopes by hand.
30,000? Wow.
We did it probably like a few weeks of full-time job, and it was fun if you think about it now, but at the moment it wasn't that fun. But yeah, my advice to myself would be, look out for people who did it and look for advice and look for positive experiences and take note to everything they've done right to make it right. So let's not try to, reinvent the wheel, but, look at previous companies' experience and how they grew and, what they did right so that you can,
Yeah.
Look at the negative as well, at the negative campaigns, and try to see what they did wrong.
Don't reinvent the wheel, but reinvent the cable, right? The charging cable. All right, guys, where can people go to learn a bit more, and we can kind of end on that note?
They can go on rollingsquare.com.
Yeah, but if we have a Telegram chat, which is the most direct way, or
if they want to join us on our Telegram chat, there you can actually see, interact with us, interact with our community. That's the fastest way for sure.
Okay, and they can get that on your Indiegogo, right?
Yeah, they can get it on Indiegogo, or the link to get there is t.me, so like T just a letter, .me/Rolling Square Family. R of rolling, the S of the square, and the F of family are capitalized.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. Really appreciate all of your insights and advice, and good luck with your remaining 7 days here.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your time. Yeah. It was very nice talking to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified Podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for tuning in to this episode where we explore cutting-edge techniques as to how to have a successful Indiegogo campaign. Now, Indiegogo is a pretty cool platform. I like them a lot. I like Kickstarter a lot. They're competitors in some ways. In other ways, they're kind of depends on the type of category that you're launching under. They had a really great year this past 2020. So I think that Indiegogo is going to continue to grow. I think Kickstarter is, and as well, equity crowdfunding. So one of the questions I've been getting recently is, hey, Sal, I know you do a lot about Kickstarter. You wrote the book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. Does that stuff apply to Indiegogo? And the question is yes, but there's also an asterisk, right? So first of all, it does apply to Indiegogo. Pretty much all the stuff that you have to do to launch a successful Kickstarter, you have to do with Indiegogo. Now, there are minute differences, okay? And I go through some of those minute differences in my YouTube videos. So if you haven't searched me on YouTube, I'm at youtube.com/crowdcrux. I go through some of those minute differences on my YouTube channel. The book itself is going to work for an Indiegogo launch. And honestly, I think that it might even work better for an Indiegogo launch in some ways, just because the type of person that is going to Indiegogo usually is interested in using things like Facebook ads, usually is interested in a profitable launch. They might be a little bit less engaged in the creative side, and they're looking to do a hardware or a design product, right? If that sounds like you, or even a software campaign, I think actually this book will do really well for you. The other thing would be, hey Sal, I know that you have this coaching thing. Is this something that I have to do before I go live and I launch? And the simple answer to that is absolutely not. The whole reason why I started this podcast and my blog and my YouTube channel is to provide free education for anyone who's in this niche. I don't think that you should have to pay in order to launch a project or something like that. Obviously, I have my own courses, I have my books, I have my one-on-one coaching, I have coaching programs, etc. But that's not for everyone. I'm not trying to always sell people on, oh, you got to book a call or something like that. It doesn't make sense to me because not everyone does. I think for the calls are really good if you need to have a certain level of confidence going into your project. If this is your first campaign or your first one didn't go so well, and now you're going into your second, to me, this is as fundamental as if you were having to go up a legal battle, you hire an hour of a lawyer's expertise, right? Or if you're it's during tax season and you're not exactly sure about something and you just want a little bit of confidence, you might hire a CPA or you might hire an accountant for an hour or two just to kind of look over your books, right? It's the same thing. I think that the consulting and the crowdfunding coaching that I do wakes people up a lot of the times to the resources that you're just not aware of. Like they did all the research and then they got in a call with me like, oh man, like I didn't know that. Or I didn't know you could actually do that on Indiegogo, like the actual functionality, or I didn't know Kickstarter worked that way, right? So there is a little bit of an insider baseball that we can talk in terms of other agencies in the industry, in terms of tools, what I think about some of these things behind the scenes, right? I'm not going to say some of it publicly, obviously. So there is a little bit of the inside baseball talk as well. And finally, giving you a sort of a laid out blueprint in terms of what you got to do next, the checklist items that you got to get done for your specific category. And I'll be brutally honest with you. While these calls are meant to be cordial and like friendly, and obviously how I am by now, at the same time, if I don't think this is a good fit or I think that there's an issue, I'm going to call it out. I'm just going to tell you right up to your face, like there's an issue here. You need to fix this before you go live. Because the worst thing that I've gone through in life is when people say, oh no, it looks amazing. That's great. Good job. And then what ends up happening? You come out with something and it sucks, right? So the worst thing is that someone just agrees with you or someone just says things to make you feel good. I think that is the worst thing as a business owner. What you want is people surrounding you who respect you, who want good things for you, have good sense of values, but they're also willing to be completely honest and upfront with you with when they think there is an issue, because that's where your blind spots are. And I think it makes a lot of sense to have that brutal level of honesty, both with yourself and when you're hiring a coach like me to help you out. Hope that makes sense. Take a second to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't yet. Really appreciate all the love and comments on Instagram. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.